Making an Impact, a program to increase male practitioners and classroom teachers. That is what IMPACT and Project IMPACT stands for. So let's get started. We're real laid back. So please, if you are going to have time at the end to entertain any questions. So our presentation overview, we're going to discuss what is the rationale for the program, provide a program description, talk about the structure of our program, and then share with you our takeaways and what we have been learning in the 5 years that Project Impact has been in existence. And what that includes is our celebrations, again, looking at our challenges, and we're going to share some actual scholar testimonials from actual scholars in our program. So Project Impact in context, like I said, we have been doing this for 5 years. The first cohort entered in the year of 2015-16. Of the 5 cohorts, I want you to look at the first where it tells you what were the number of students who actually entered in the program at the beginning of the year. So cohort 1 in that 2015-16 cohort, there were 13 scholars. And as you see, going down, we had 12, 8, 7, and in this latest cohort that just started in September, 2 scholars. When we're talking about this year of 2020, the cohort 1 is in yellow because we are now in our 5th year, so they have moved on. Those 2 scholars were the last ones remaining out of 13, and we will talk about that later. But those 2 scholars in particular are now winding down in their clinical experience for them to finish in 2021. And as you see, comparing where we started and where we are, you see how the numbers are. The breakdown for our males of color, African American, we have 5 scholars, Latino or Latinx is 7, and we have 1 Asian scholar in our IMPACT program. So what's the rationale? It may not necessarily be, overbearing and clear to everyone. Understand that by 2022, non-white students will make up 54.7% of our public school students. Students of color equal more than half of the overall student population, yet teachers of color only make up 15% of the educators in New Jersey. Nearly 82% of public school teachers are white. So Project Impact answers that question. Why? What is going on? How can we make this more palatable? It was created because we want to respond to the persistent opportunity gaps faced by our young men of color and from diverse backgrounds. And let me make sure you know another thing, which many of you already know. When we're talking about the entire country, only 2% of male teachers are Black. 2% in the entire country. We have to answer that calling. So the description of our program, it is a recruitment and retention program for males of color and teacher education. IMPACT students are provided a 4-year scholarship, 4-year for traditional students, which are freshmen coming right from high school, or a 2-year academic scholarship for transfer students. And I want to note in the pictures that you see, the top picture was recent. Those are our 2 newest scholars in the program. And that was at our tie-tying ceremony, which we'll talk about later, or Kaleb will definitely discuss that. And to the right is our dean, Dr. Jean Gaton. Below that is our executive director, Dr. Stacy Lefwich. And that was during a visit to a school in Camden that took place last year. So what about the structure? So Project Impact in the center, we are answering and making sure we have the recruitment piece, the mentoring professional development for scholars in the program, looking at our curriculum, and then looking at student services, supports, and resources. So let's talk about one part of it, which is recruitment. I just started with Rowan College of Education last September. So I've been here a little bit over a year. Before I decided to come to Rowan, there was a part-time recruiter. So now I am a full-time recruiter, and they add the retention piece because, as you saw in the previous screen, we were definitely starting robust, but then somehow some scholars did not finish. So we're focusing again on underrepresented groups and teacher education. So I visit and I present at high schools. Now, obviously, per COVID, I am doing all of my recruitment efforts and speaking to prospects virtually. So in my virtual presentations, I speak to juniors and senior of color. I also visit county superintendent roundtables to tell superintendents of schools and administrators what we are doing at Project Impact, because I want them to see what is needed, get them to talk seriously to their counselors about what we are doing so that by the time I reach out, they are familiar with the program. I attend school fairs wherever I can go, where I can get the ear of our young brothers, I am there. And we also invite applicants to open houses. And so I will speak, especially on the recruitment efforts. It can be a very big challenge because, after all, I respect what our school counselors do. What has happened, especially when I first started, we look at teachers as looking a certain way, having a certain GPA, and counselors know their students. And so what was happening, especially last year, they were picking and choosing which students should be in my presentation. And so what I encourage counselors to do, this is not just about making every man of color, young man of color in your school be a teacher, but what is paramount to your efforts of picking and choosing, we have to allow for our young Black and brown males to have the information, because if they don't have the information, they cannot make educated decisions about where they're going to college, or if they're even going to college. And what has happened also, when you speak to most teachers, and I've done this twice with my colleagues, I ask groups of my colleagues, when were you first introduced to teaching? Like, when did you know you want to be a teacher, or someone saw that in you? At least 95% of my white female counterparts were approached in elementary school. So that the seed was already planted. Whether she became a teacher or not, someone saw something in her. When I speak to our young brothers and our juniors and our seniors, they have never been approached with this possibility or this opportunity. So we're fighting a hard crowd that never even sees themselves as teachers. Then we go on to the application process. Just so you know, the 3 requirements to even be in Project Impact. Number 1, you are a male of color. Number 2, you are majoring in education. And the 3rd, you are accepted to Rowan University. That simple. So they complete an application that is online. And when I recruit at schools now virtually, I provide the link to the application in the chat. Before I even leave, I have the gentleman fill it out. And I make sure they understand this is not a contract saying that you have to come to Rowan or that you are going to be a teacher. But I want to keep in touch with these gentlemen, because after I leave, there may not be any follow-up. After we receive the application, I then have a conversation with them through email. And oftentimes these gentlemen have my actual cell phone number. That's how important it is. We make sure we have a group interview for all those interested. And the group interview consists of mentors, the executive director, and me. None of this can happen, though, until they are accepted to Rowan, before the final selection. But even I visited at least 5 schools thus far, and I was overwhelmed that most of the gentlemen I spoke to have already applied to Rowan. So my next process is to go in and work with admissions to get view of their application, to keep them abreast of what they need. I know admissions is doing that too, but if you don't do it yourself, I just feel it ain't gonna be done the way you want it to be done. And then we address the barriers to college access. So we provide financial support. The minimum that scholars receive is $2,000 per semester for all 4 years, as we said earlier, that they are in Rowan. They could also receive possible funding for housing. And bigger than everything, when I talk to our young men of color, I come like I'm coming to you. I am not talking all this big untouchableness of this profession. I want them to understand that what you had, the Miss Crabtrees and the suspensions and the talking down and some of the really horrible experiences that you've had in this thing called education, that is why you're needed. When we're talking about the racial pandemic that is basically accompanying COVID, you are the ones that can teach us veterans what is missing. What do we need to do? So I'm talking to our young men with respect and validating that they are needed. And oftentimes that's not the message that is given. So after a student is accepted into the impact program, in the summer we have a scholar orientation. And that's just an opportunity for us to meet with the new cohort scholars and their parents. In this meeting, the roles and responsibilities are shared so that everyone is on the same page. This past summer, it was virtual. So parents were there next to their sons, asking questions. We had already sent them the MOU, which outlines the responsibilities of the scholar. And it tells them what is needed. What are the consequences? What does this mean in you receiving the scholarship money? What does it mean when you are going to be talking to your mentors, meetings, etc.? Everything is outlined in this MOU. And we discuss all of that during the orientation. So looking at our program curriculum, it's aligned to the College of Education's tagline, which is access, success, and equity, not equally, equity. So we make sure, even with the 13 scholars that are in our program right now, every one of them, no exaggeration, has different needs for them to be successful. And we make sure that we cover that. We are granting them access. And this is what Rowan has wonderfully been doing to make sure what is going to be palatable to the students that we serve. What does a student who comes from a Bridgeton, Cherry Hill, Paulsboro, what does that individual student need for success? Because I'm telling you, it's a really big transitional moment to come onto Rowan's campus and be in an environment that is so strange. We want to make sure that we are tagging that quickly and making sure they have the supports. So the classes are new and redesigned, answering the call of sociocultural learning theory and the social justice philosophical stance. There's no way, especially right now with what we've been seeing and continues to happen with our Black and Brown people, there's no way that we can ignore what has been affecting the homes of many of our students that we come in contact with. So we are intentional with our faculty who are teaching those core education classes. We don't want to turn our gentlemen off. Yes, college is already a hard transition, but we want to make sure that we have the people in those positions that are understanding and want to learn how to make sure they're accommodating teaching and holding accountable our young men of color. And one of the biggest, exciting things that I found is our Men of Color network. We utilize these brothers that I lovingly call these men who are in the field and provide opportunities for clinical experiences. And again, we'll talk about our Men of Color network shortly. So, Kaleb, I'm talking too much.
I can present this one.
Please. And I mean, speak from the heart. Do what you do.
For the mentoring through the Men of Color Network. So the network consists of male educators of color from local school districts who have committed to individual and or group mentoring of impact participants. So basically, when you get into the program, you're assigned a mentor, and then so that's somebody that's going to be looking after you. And then you're also assigned a brother. So that's somebody that you're going to be looking after. The mentors meet with assigned impact scholars weekly through informal activities or communications. So I know I talk to my mentor weekly. Some of my brothers, they talk to their mentors daily. It's really just another guide, which is important, especially in minority males in America. Mentors and scholars meet formally every month to participate in Saturday Men of Color meeting sessions. So lately we've had two sessions so far. It's been kind of weird just because of COVID and everything. And so we'll be there on campus, my brothers and I, and our mentors, Men of Color, they'll be joined through a Zoom meeting. So they're able to see us, we can see them. So it's still interactive. And then they're still talking to us, they're giving us advice throughout their presentations as well.
Thank you, Kaleb. So
So
go ahead. You got that, Kaleb?
you could take this.
Okay, but I do want you to talk on the Man of Excellence piece.
Okay.
Okay. So our whole thing and our young men who come into Project Impact, becoming a man of excellence. What does that mean? And that is our men of color. That's what they touch on. And just to make sure you understand, our men of color are men of color who are in the education field only. So we have teachers, superintendents, retired principals, coaches, you name it, you got it, all subject areas, because we want to make sure that the communion between man and a young man is fluid and, purposeful. While I have a passion, certainly, for students, period, my children of color, definitely. There is something to be said about the experiences that we share, but also that may differ. So when we're talking about 2% of men of color in front of classrooms countrywide, I can't necessarily speak to that as much as a man that's already walking this path. So that is why the union between mentor and mentee is so critical. So we do have activities, services, and supports. Tie-tying ceremony, which I spoke about before. If you look at the top two pictures, the tie-tying ceremony is our formal way of welcoming all new cohort members into the family. And that's really what we are. So Project Impact puts on this ceremony where there's a part towards the end of the segment, because we have people speaking about men of color, Project Impact, how this is so critical right now with all students in our country. And then at the end, as you see on the right, all of our cohort scholars for that year, they stand in front of everyone. And every mentor that is matched with that scholar ties a College of Education impact tie around their neck. When I came on board last year, I had no idea what this would be like. And I'm hard for tears to come out. I try not to even cry at movies, but this one had me choked up, because you have, like, it's a rite of passage. And you have family members there, as we did last year. There wasn't really a dry eye in the house, because, wow, talk about acceptance. I'm validated. I mean something. I have my big brother here. You know what? This may actually happen. I'm feeling this right now. So that's what tie-tying ceremony is all about. The blazer ceremony, that takes place at the end of the year in May. And for all those scholars who have passed the Praxis core exams, they are then given in this ceremony a blazer like Kaleb is wearing today to signify that you have made it past the first step. We also have field trips, as you see in the middle. We have some of us on the bus. And I believe that was when we were going to Cherry Hill, who we have a great partnership with. And one of their principals is one of our mentors. We have the Praxis Lab. The Praxis Lab has been an Achilles heel, not just for scholars in a College of Education. This is pretty much every school that we've talked to. So we make sure that we have a lab to help them as soon as school opens to have practice on, the actual test, to give them assessments. Sometimes we hold actual classes per subject to prepare them to take that test one time and pass. Because we already know if you don't pass the Praxis, you have to keep paying for it. Then we have structured activities. So achieving success through collaboration, engagement, and determination, which is we call Ascend, we partner with. And basically under Ascend, because Ascend and Project Impact pretty much interlap, because Ascend is over the EOF program, which is the Educational Opportunity Fund, as well as RISE, which basically covers all first-generation students. So many of our Project Impact students are also under Ascend, and they have particular activities and requirements as well. So we work like brother and sister. And then you've already heard about the MOC meetings. That is a structured activity. All scholars already know, without my even saying anything, you are required to be there because we're only meeting once a month. And this is for professional development, as well as supporting you emotionally and socially. But really quickly, or do what you do, Kaleb. What is this man of excellence when you first heard about it up until now?
So before entering Rowan, I never really heard of the term of being a man of excellence, and I definitely didn't think of myself being associated with that term. But just joining Impact and hearing that term for the first time, it holds weight. So I kind of related to the whole Titan ceremony and everything of that nature, almost like a fraternity, but it's deeper than that. Because in my eyes, you're surrounded by these men who have already been in your shoes and they're going to help you get through, right? So being a man of excellence, walking around campus, participating in activities, holding that stature within yourself, and hopefully relaying it to others so that they follow the same way. We're all here for each other and impact it. Like Miss Nadeen said before, it's a family. So just for example, being a man of excellence, even in small things like sending an email, whatever I'm attaching my name to throughout the week or throughout my 4 years at Rowan, once I send it out, it's gonna be there forever. So if I'm focusing on being a man of excellence, I have to just focus on hitting all my parts and not being weak in any areas. Now, when I am weak in any areas, another part of being a man of excellence is knowing how to come back from being weak in certain areas or maybe falling and getting back up. That's what I related to.
Thank you. And just so everyone knows, those bottom two pictures are speaking to what Kaleb said. They actually present last year when we were definitely doing face-to-face. They took the reins and they spoke to juniors and seniors. I believe that was the school that's in Camden. I think it was Democracy Prep. We sit back because the proof is in the pudding. I get it. Students are looking at adults like, you're just doing this because you work for the school. Okay, no problem. You just met me. You can't really believe me. But here's some brothers right here that are in the program. They're going to tell you the real. So ask your questions. They're going to tell you what's going on with them. Many of our scholars, They run the same story that they are doing with the students that you're talking to. I'm from around the way. I also had a suspension. I had a teacher never wanted to even listen to what I said. I also had some house problems, some home problems. But now, I'm manning up and I'm good. And just know that if you come into this program, you really do have brothers that have your back. And we can't say that, but our students like Kaleb can.
Sure.
So talking about that MOC, our Men of Color meetings, I just want to share the structure with you because there's definitely a rhyme to the reason and why we do things in this way. So the first thing that we do, we have a breakfast. Now it turned to a breakfast snack because we already know about funding and it's been kind of crazy right now. That also affects the College of Education. So we make sure we feed our young men when they come in. Just so you know, our meetings start at 9 a.m. on the dot on the Saturdays that we meet. So I tell our young men they need to be in the place by 8:45 to start their breakfast, get together, because sometimes some of our brothers don't even see each other during the week. They're just that busy with life. So once we start at 9 o'clock, I will lead some type of opener that's interactive, just an activity to get the blood going. I mean, it's Saturday morning. I'm sure many of them will probably be in the bed, but I give them something that they can definitely grasp. Like our last meeting, which was just last Saturday, I showed them a quick video from Welcome Back, Kotter. I'm sure many of you may know. If not, I don't even want to talk to your young self right now. But seriously, it was about substitute teaching because many of our scholars, once they reach 60 hours of their class, they can now go apply to be a substitute. So the reason why I showed that, because they had 3 examples of substitutes that were in the classroom in front of the sweat hogs. And they ran 2 of them out, but the third one came with something better and they got in line. So the mentors and I, a 10-minute activity turned into 20 minutes because there were so many things that the scholars and the mentors pulled from it. So that's what that's about in the beginning. Next, we go to housekeeping. So it could be about praxis deadlines, things you need to know as far as any type of study groups or something going on Rowan's campus. We definitely celebrate scholar successes. If they pass the praxis exam, it doesn't have to be all 3. Did you pass one? We're going to holler about it. Like Kaleb is doing. I try to make sure there's, one of our scholars with me every time I go to a school. I always celebrate them in doing that because I know that any success I have with the school is not just me. It is on you. And then we may talk about some concerns that we may have. Maybe someone's going through something. We definitely had this pandemic. We had to really keep checking in, for example, in the spring, because when COVID hit during spring break, it wasn't as smooth as people think. Oh, you're already home, so it's not a big deal. No, we had to make sure we went in because we saw some serious transitional problems. Next is all about the performance development. So normally one of our mentors or 2 will lead a topic discussion. We get all of our topics, we brainstorm in the summer because the mentors also have an orientation. So we get through all that mud. What exactly are we not touching on? Learning from the previous year. So whatever topic discussion that is for that Saturday, a mentor and scholar, mentor, they present. And again, it's a relevant topic like we did last Saturday based on substitute teaching and making sure you know how to sell your brand. That was the topic for last Saturday. And this is the classic opportunity to develop yourself professionally. After that 90-minute presentation, there is an online reflection exit slip. Students will share out what they've learned, questions they may have for the mentors, comments between students. And then at the end, we make sure to really respect why we're here. 30 minutes is devoted to mentors and scholars meeting and checking in. So last year it was great. Everyone's in the same room. The mentors get with their scholars and they have their private discussions. They talk about what was happening during the week. They make sure that they have maybe updated dates on when they're going to meet again. Many of our scholars and mentors did meet outside of Rowan at least one time for lunch, Sunday dinner, you name it. It's about what is going to make it work for them. Obviously, with the pandemic, what happens in that 30 minutes? I close out the meeting, or Dr. Leverage close out the meeting, and we allow the scholars to go to wherever they're going to be in the room or in the building, and they reach out to their mentor via cell phone call. And for 30 minutes, it's only dedicated to that. That has nothing to do with me. I don't need to know what you're talking about. That is that communion between man and young man. Did you want to say anything about that, Kaleb?
No, I'm not going to touch on that.
Okay.
You hit the parts.
Okay. So the takeaways from the 4 years of implementation, I want to make sure that I'm very clear. I know that this is our 5th year, but obviously we just started our 5th year. So looking on the previous years of implementation, let's talk about those challenges. So one of our challenges that we were seeing, which also lends itself to why the Men of Color meeting was changed drastically from last year, is the connection with the mentors as far as communication. I would argue it's not just our young males. I think sometimes it may be generational, and also the abandonment issues and some of the abuses that our children have suffered at the hands of adults and not really caring about them. Sometimes those relationships can be a little bit rocky to start because some scholars have actually said, I don't trust easily. Why do I have to talk to this mentor every week? What is the important, like, why are we doing this? And the reason why, even in that question, why it answers the question, because we got to make sure we learn how to get together again. And everyone is not out to get you or see you fall and fail. And I can genuinely say that every one of our professional mentors and our MOC members, they are about it. They're not paid to be mentors. They're volunteering. They volunteer their time, not just one Saturday out of the month. Some of them, like I said, they're meeting with their scholars. They're providing some tutoring. They're giving man to young man advice, whether it be relationships, mental issues, family challenges. That is why it is so crucial. So it's a matter of just kind of nudging our scholars. We can do this. I know it's hard to say, trust me, but you will soon find that the mentors and the College of Education is here for a reason. Also, we had a really hard time, and I'm only speaking from when I came on to the crew. Our young men would not come to ask for help. So if they couldn't afford a praxis, if they just needed something to eat, they didn't know how to come to us. It's embarrassing. Well, I'm supposed to be a young man. I'm supposed to be able to handle this. No, like, knock that out. That's why we're here. You need to know something new. Project Impact answers that question. I got it. I understand. You shared what you've gone through. It's a new day. Let us at least try to help you. We can't answer all questions, but let us at least try. And like I mentioned before, COVID took us for a loop. As I share with you, we only had 2 scholars come into the program this year. We interviewed in the spring before COVID, at least, and during COVID, at least maybe 8 to 10 scholars. But because of COVID deaths and some of our candidates' families, because students had to now go to work to help support the family, all types of things, we ended up with 2. So all of this has a domino effect. And then we had current scholars that I was fearful we were going to lose out of the program because they could not see doing this remote learning for yet another semester or even a year. It was difficult. And so we had to reach out more than they would let us in. Another challenge is missing important deadlines, whether it be the praxis, you all understand the criminal history clearances, and obviously those clinical practice applications. And people take that lightly, but I can say myself in my own story, I didn't even know how to plan or really take notes until I was in college. There's no one talking about deadlines, why being late.
Nadeen, did we lose you?
It becomes a challenge. So we
Yeah,
had
Nadeen, you went out for a little bit.
You were muted for just a minute.
I was?
I think it was
Okay.
a connection.
Okay, maybe I lost connection. What was the last thing that you heard? I'm sorry.
I don't know. I would repeat the last like 2 points that you made.
The
Okay.
deadline about planning.
Okay. So our students, we are finding no one has talked to our scholars about deadlines, being on time, why it's critical that when you are reading, or we're reiterating that there is a deadline in terms of receiving your praxis results, getting your criminal and history clearances done. This is something that we realized, okay, we had to keep reiterating this, and it's not bashing the scholar. It's a matter of, you only know what you know. You only know what you're taught. So we had to kind of, okay, let's pump our brakes a little bit and make sure that from beginning to end, we're emphasizing this thing about deadlines and timeliness. We had changes to our MOU. So it speaks to what I just said. We now have deadlines that's in the MOU to take the praxis core. Because ultimately, like we told our younger brothers, if you're not on time for this praxis core or the praxis 2, this then has you in school longer. And you can't do clinical practice if you don't have these requirements out of the way. And that is not what you signed up for. We also had to make contracts for every scholar who needs to take a praxis exam to work in the praxis lab. So if you have any outstanding exams, you had to do a contract that I will see with the praxis director of that lab, so that we can see what days and hours you have committed to being in that lab for practice. And every semester after we see your transcript to look at your GPA, and the GPA is, you have to have a 3.0, or you may be placed in a warning status or probation. And we also implemented a consequence policy. And this is not to be like a Debbie Downer. It's a matter of actions have consequences. Men of excellence are doing what they need to do. So while we are definitely holding our boys accountable, our young men, accountable, it's with a reason, because we know what's out there. We know when you go in for that interview, you have to be right. That may be your only chance. The weekly check-ins with mentors, we definitely emphasize. And then I continuously check in with our scholars. We do group me. Everyone has my cell phone number. I text them, I email them, I call them. I'm not having anyone slip on my watch. And Kaleb can attest to that, because I'm sure they get tired of Ms. Herring calling and emailing them almost every day. Okay, that laugh answered the question. So our takeaways and celebrations. First scholar graduated in 2019. We have 2 scholars graduating this December. 10 out of our 13 scholars passed that praxis core, which means they have blazers. So only 3 remaining, they're going to take their praxis core before December 1st, which is the deadline to receive their scores. We have more fluid relations with instructors and advisors. At the beginning of each semester, I send an email out to everyone's instructor to let them know, I don't know what you heard, but this brother right here in your class is in Project Impact, and he has a family behind him that wants to partner with you to ensure his success. The advisors know who I am. They talk to me about what may be missing. Like, our scholars are surrounded. So this family makes sure everybody else on the block knows who we are. And like I said previously, we hired a full-time practice lab coordinator. So very quickly, that picture at the top, that is all of us, all the family after the tie tying ceremony. We're not as cute as we should be because of those masks, but we're doing all right. Below are two of our scholars who traveled with me to Montclair University over the holiday break to present about Project Impact. And right next to that, wonderful mentor, Mr. Guy, who's in Cherry Hill, and two of our scholars. The smiles say it all. And that is after we had one of our MOC meetings. Okay. Let's quickly share a couple words.
What does Project Impact mean to you?
To me, Project Impact is Project community and family. Definitely learned a lot during my time here, especially a lot about dressing the part, acting the part. You learn a lot about how the world is out there. Went to a lot of schools, met a lot of administrators, other students, and through the program, I actually got my current tutoring position, where I'm working with first and third graders, and it's awesome so far. So I really am thankful for being part of the program.
What does Project Impact mean to you?
Project Impact means having a chance in shaping my future and others' futures. I kind of decided to be a teacher at the last minute, and joining Project Impact really helped me understand why and what that meant to become a teacher. And with all the resources and people around, I would never have even had a chance to go to college or be nearly where I am right now without it.
What does Project Impact mean to you?
Project Impact means to me, it means everything. It means having a second family. When around your family, leave and go to school, and you have a second family here, and everybody here together. They push you to be better, and Impact, they hold you to a higher standard, so you have to do your job on your part. And just to have that resources around you and brothers you can count on to push you to be the best, it means everything to be in Project Impact.
So, how is this relevant to us? I mean, I know we're at a convening. That's really, Nadeen, why are you asking this question? But I want to make it very, very clear. The responsibility for true educational equity is on all of us. Men of color in classrooms is not just about mirroring our Black and brown students. It's about changing the context of how we all reevaluate and validate manhood and leadership in our underserved communities. And I always tell our young men, yes, we want to make sure that those little ones that look like you have a chance. But do you understand that as soon as you walk into a classroom and you're teaching Shakespeare or science or history or English, do you understand that some of the white children in your class also are like, wait a minute, this doesn't fit the 4, 5, 6 at 11 o'clock news of people I see like you. Like, wow, you're relevant. Yes, you are. So creating an authentic relationary, that was my word, I'm an English major, and revolutionary education versus just schooling for our children, it is crucial, and it does warrant our putting in the work. Thank you for your time, but there's my information as well as Project Impact information. I truly welcome anyone. Give me a call, send me an email, any questions. I would love to have a conversation. I love these gentlemen, all 13 of them. They may work my nerves, but guess what? They are so worth it because I want to learn from them.
Ms. Herron, we have some questions in the chat. Do we